Get ready for a surprise!
Hey, it's Bill from Hunterwick, and this is the Nerd Stalking Podcast on YouTube. This time we discuss the value of remakes and reboots.
Okay. Alrighty. Welcome to Nerd Stalking. Tonight we aim to prove the idea that Hollywood is bereft of original ideas because we're talking about movie remakes and reboots. This segment of Nerd Stalking Remakes and Reboots features Total Recall and some other stuff. And speaking of nerds, I would like to introduce the panel. Chad. So anyway, before we Chad, what the hell happened to everybody?
Well, I wasn't feeling I was getting enough talk time.
Is it one of those Agatha Christie and then there were none?
You won't be here next week.
It'll be the Chad's show. I'll be the next one on the block. So yeah, it's just me and Chad tonight for this episode, but I'm sure we can fill the shoes of our missing compatriots.
We may even impersonate them from time to time.
Maybe so. I can think of a bunch of nerdy stuff and talk like Ross. And
that's right. I'm going to grumble like Laura.
Homer. And then I'll do my Gene Krupa imitation on the table for Jackie.
Well, at one point, I'm just going to walk away from the table and shout from the other side of the room.
This is what happens when you don't show up, right? You get ridiculed. You get made fun of. I wanted to ask a question when we're talking about remakes and reboots. Is there a difference between the two?
A remake and a reboot?
Yes.
Well, I don't know if there'd be a difference. I would say that a remake, well, there are the ones who go note for note and just try to remake the movie.
Right.
And then a reboot is maybe re-envisioning it.
Right. But you don't think a remake is always really adheres to the original? Because I don't know if that's the case.
Maybe, you know what it is? Reboot is a bullshit word that the industry has created to make it sound innovative. But isn't.
Right.
How about that?
That's a good enough definition. What I was thinking was, if it's a reboot, there's more changes involved, right? Like you keep the title, you keep the character's name, but you change the actors, right? Different actors. And I think that's really what a reboot is about, is you're trying to get rid of the actors to get new actors in.
Well, I guess this is why they use reboot when they say Spider-Man. They've rebooted it because now Andrew Garfield is the new Spider-Man.
Right.
So
maybe, yeah, exactly. I was going to say there's another difference between the two is a remake is generally done to something that's 20 or 30 years old, but a reboot it's an excuse for redoing it in a quicker timeline, right? Like you said, like Spider-Man.
Well, and it only applies to franchises, I guess, because you can't reboot something that only had one movie.
Maybe.
Because whereas like Spider-Man, there was the Tobey Maguire, there's Andrew Garfield, and now there's a new guy.
Yeah, that's the answer. It's when it deals with franchises, they're rebooting the franchise. They've made a few films of that franchise and they're resetting it.
Right.
Okay, well,
whereas where you have Bond, they never use reboot with Bond.
Right.
Because it's all Bond, even though technically they could with the more recent Bond. That truly is a reboot.
Right.
Because it's a departure from what Bond
is. Is it really a departure, or is it just returning more to the Connery, gritty, dangerous Bond?
Well, as a big Bond fan, maybe not as big as Ross. Mm-hmm. Ross, what do you think? Yes, it was very good. Okay.
Chad, you're exactly right.
Yes.
As usual.
That's right. James Bond is amazing, especially when he was on the helm of Star Trek ships. Thank you, Ross. Enough with your Star Trek.
Bond is a really interesting character because he's wavered. You know, he had started off with the gritty, dangerous Bond of Dr. No and From Russia with Love, right? Very quick, violent. Yeah. Very violent.
He has a license to kill.
Yeah, for real. Like in those.
Right.
Connery kind of started to slide into camp, and then they went with Lazenby.
And I really like Lazenby.
I do. I like that movie. On Her Majesty's Secret Service. It's a good flick.
Well, I would say that that's the movie that really inspired the Spy Who Shagged Me series.
Right.
Because that's the movie that all the scenes they're shot the same way. The kind of base up in the mountain ski villa that they have is very much like the one in the Austin Powers movies.
Oh, behave. Yeah. Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Ow. Just thinking about the nature of remakes and reboots is the best reason there is for making a remake is that they're going to blow open the scope of the film. Like, you've got the, obvious crowds all gathered in a soundstage in Blade Runner, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, obviously a soundstage. And then if you do a remake, you're able to blow that world open where they can go anywhere and do anything, right? So it just opens the world up, opens the scope of the world up.
That's the movie that's the one I was trying to remember. That's the one that they're
Blade
doing
Runner.
a sequel.
Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Yeah, with Ford is
That's
in it,
right.
Harrison Ford is going to be in it.
So you'll be able to see if they can blow out the scope.
All right.
And they won't see the car come down on a forklift.
That's the benefit of when they remade Total Recall, is they were able to make this world. The world is very interesting to me in the Total Recall remake. They make the whole city that he lives in, and you can, when they're doing the chase scenes, you can see him. It's all very futuristic, and it's buildings piled upon top of buildings, and it's a more interesting world that he lives in. But whether or not it's an interesting character or a plot is a different question. My first feeling was when I watched the original again in preparation of this podcast is that they just don't make movies that clever anymore. You know what I mean?
You think so? You think the first one was clever?
The first one was clever. It was very clever. Like, to me, the idea of a good Total Recall film is how much it adheres to that kind of, Phillip K. Dickish mindfuck thing, right? Like paranoia and is this real? Is this fake? That to me is the essence of Total Recall. And in the original, I thought they really played with it very well. They kind of rode that line. Is he really a secret agent, or is he strapped to a chair in Recall and something's fucked up and he's, stuck there?
Mm-hmm.
He's dreaming it all. For an example, it starts off, he's a construction worker and he's married to Sharon Stone. And he's just going through his day. But when he talks to his wife and leaves, she looks at him. There's a look. Or when he's talking with his construction worker, he's like, I'm thinking of going to Recall and get one of those memories implanted. The guy goes, you shouldn't do that. And the guy kind of looks at him. The people that are around him are suspicious. If it's just a guy who was a construction worker, there wouldn't be any of that. So they kind of hint that, maybe he really is a spy who's being checked. When he goes to Recall, they do stuff like, because in the first part where he's, where he's just a construction worker, he's kind of obsessed with Mars.
I'd like to go to Mars.
So again, there's a thing where not all of this has happened before he's gone to Recall, right? Because when he goes to Recall and gets those memories implanted, that's the trigger that, all of a sudden the plot gets going. And it's like, they're showing him pictures of Mars, and you see the artifacts, and he sees Cohagen, the governor of Mars. He sees the girl that he eventually meets. Like, they show him all the shit that's going to happen, after the plot gets started, and he goes to Mars and he sees these people, he sees the artifacts, he knows Cohagen. So I think they really do a good job of setting that up. They put all the things in place where you'll wonder, is it real? Is he a super spy? Is he just a guy who's still, trapped in his fantasies? To me, it was interesting. They play with that well.
That came in, 83?
It was 89. No, wait, it was 90. The original was 1990.
Really? That late?
Yeah.
Yeah, when it came out, I guess I had an idea of who Arnold Schwarzenegger was and what his movies were like.
Of course.
And when I saw that, I didn't like it. I didn't like him in it. I didn't like the movie. I still, the last time I tried to watch it, I couldn't watch it.
Well, another thing I thought when I started watching it was it really sucks that Paul Verhoeven still isn't making movies. He was on top of the world in the late 80s, early 90s. So he directed Robocop, he did Total Recall, and he did Basic Instinct. And those were huge hits. And that puts you right in the A-list for directors, right? Mm-hmm. And the unfortunate thing is, after that, he did Showgirls, which was a fucking disaster.
Or was it?
Like a career-ending
We're still talking about
fiasco. Yeah.
So,
we're talking about how it murdered Elizabeth Berkley's career. It murdered Paul Verhoeven's career. It didn't murder Gina Gershon's career. But you can't get rid of Gina Gershon. I miss Verhoeven because he was a crazy motherfucker. He would go balls to the wall, crazy action and cursing and sex. He was doing something different. He was making these films that were kind of almost out of control.
Do you know why I'm such a happy person?
No, sir.
As long as the turbinium keeps flowing, I can do anything I want. Anything. In fact, the only thing I ever worry about is that one day, if the rebels win, it all might end.
And you're fucking making it happen!
It's not the safe, formulaic shit you get now. He's kind of a crazy Dutch motherfucker. Total Recall. It was written by Ron Shusett and Dan O'Bannon. As a writing team, they wrote Alien and Dead and Buried. And Dan O'Bannon himself is a legendary figure in Hollywood because he's kind of a mercurial character that would burn as many bridges as he built.
Now, mercurial, does that mean he's gooey and silvery, or is he really fast?
It means he's trapped in a thermometer. This guy, Dan O'Bannon, he made Life Force. You ever see that? Space Vampires. Yeah. Return of the Living Dead, which is
one of my favorites.
Yeah, which is quite often listed as the best zombie movie ever made.
I would say so. In fact, I don't know how many times I saw that in the theater. Nina Hartley. It's like
imagine having Nina Hartley in a film.
No, not Nina. No, it wasn't.
They have had porn like David Cronenberg. He had Marilyn Chambers in.
What she was in Rabid. Yeah, that's right. And it wasn't Nina Hartley in Return of the Jedi. This is like broken telephone going really bad.
Nina Hartley.
I've heard
of her.
Linnea Quigley. Linnea Quigley. And she became Return of the Jedi. Fucking doing it all the time. Boy, you got some editing ahead of you.
You really wanted George to
Speaking of Linnea
porn.
Quigley.
He's got the power, right? I'm fucking made Star Wars. I'm putting all my favorite porn stars in this film.
May the dork be with you. Linnea Quigley was in Return of the Living Dead as the punk girl.
Okay.
Trash, I think her name was.
Yep.
And she went on to become the it girl in B movies.
Right. Yeah. I remember, I think in Premiere they called it a Scream Queen.
Scream Queen, yeah.
Yeah. And they did a profile of her. I remember reading that.
There was Brittany Stevens, Linnea Quigley, where they were like the two big ones.
Right.
And they did all those, they did trauma films. They brought, I think one of them was in Invisible Maniac that starred Savannah, speaking of porn stars. Right. She starred in that. That's right.
Our favorite 70s and 80s porn stars. So Return of the Living Dead. He did the 1986 version of Invaders from Mars. Speaking of remakes, I don't know if he wrote the whole screenplay, but he must have done segments for Heavy Metal. And probably most famously for Film Geeks is he wrote and was an actor in Dark Star. Dark Star is a film that John Carpenter made as a student film at USC, and he expanded it to feature length, and they released it as a feature film. And it is fucking fabulous. It is a great, great film. They're in deep space. This is low budget. Like, I forget, I read somewhere it was probably like $60,000 budget. Imagine this epic science fiction film. So it's a crew of guys in a ship, and what they're doing is they're flying around the galaxy and they're blowing up planets that are unstable, that in a solar system that's being pegged for colonization. The captain of the ship is dead, and he's in suspended animation. He's frozen, and he's got things attached to his head so he can actually still give advice and command. They drop these smart bombs onto the planets and blow them up, and one of the bombs becomes sentient and like refuses to deploy. There's an alien, and it's funny because, like I said, he and Ron Shusett.
It sounds funny.
He and Ron Shusett did Alien, but in this, I wonder if I got the date for it. 1974 is when Dark Star came out, so it's way before Alien. But in that film, they have an alien that looks like a beach ball with tentacles, which it's a beach ball with tentacles taped onto it, and it gets loose on the ship, and it's like they're chasing it. So you can see, the genesis of Alien from this. It's like Lucas with THX 1138. He did that as a student film, and then they blew it up to a feature-length film and released it.
Dark star. They are not lost in space. They are loose.
So many great lines and moments in the original Total Recall, like, get your ass to Mars. Or he takes out his wife, his fake wife, Sharon Stone. He says, consider that a divorce, when he shoots her. My favorite is the guy's trying to kill him with the big drill that's drilling through the earth to try to find the artifacts on Mars. And ironically, Arnie picks up a drill and drills through the big earth moving drill that they're trying to kill him with, and he's like, screw you.
Oh, Arnold.
I guess that's what you were talking about. You saw the film and you just saw Arnold making his quips, and you didn't like
it's just, I don't know. I found that the special effects when it came out weren't as good as other films of the time.
Dick, I'm very disappointed.
You know what's funny is Total Recall was the second most expensive film ever made.
Really?
Yeah, it was. At the time. It was only second to Rambo 3.
This time it's personal.
Which they must have sunk a lot of money in. But so they spent a lot of money on those special effects that you didn't like.
$65 million.
Yeah.
They spent $65 million on the first one. And do you know how much they spent on the second one?
How much?
$125 million.
Of Total Recall?
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't actually.
Which is pretty low, actually. Yeah. Considering how good the effects are.
It's 2013?
Yeah, they're double. Almost exactly double, actually.
Wow, that's funny.
Did you like the second one?
The idea of the remake, it's never a good sign when the movie starts and you gotta fucking read shit, unless it's a Star Wars film, right? Yeah. Because they start off with the title cards and it's like, it's the future, and there's been a biological war, and there's only 2 areas inhabitable on Earth. It's the UK and Australia. And there's a link that they can travel in 14 minutes moving through the Earth's core. And it's like this they have, I hate films where it starts off like, start a film like the original Total Recall, just start it. It's a guy with his wife and it's a domestic scene, and then shit goes pear-shaped, right? I don't need...
This story should catch you up.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Johnny Cat. Where can I take you tonight?
Drive!
Would you please repeat the destination?
Oh, anywhere, just go!
King Kong was one of the movies that I was going to talk about. Peter Jackson and his remake of King Kong it really has amazing moments. And the problem with that film is that he just doesn't know how to cut it. It's just, it needs to be edited because it's like 3 hours long and there's nothing new about it. It is exactly the first 1933 King Kong, except, the difference between the modern King Kong and the old King Kong is that new King Kong is the victim. Old King Kong is the victim, but in the movie they tell you he's the monster.
Right.
Even at the end, it's the director saying, "'Tis beauty killed the beast."
Right.
No, you killed him, you asshole. Like, you're the one who took him off Skull Island and
right.
Caused all this shit.
Right.
But it is really like he made a beautiful version of the 1933 film. I got to say about Peter Jackson.
And that wraps it up for this episode of the Nerd Stalking Podcast. If you can throw us a few dollars to help support the show, the link to do so is in the description. Thanks for watching.
We hope you enjoyed the ride.